Hey everybody, Akash here and welcome to the show. This video is a highlight for all upcoming videos. Today, we're diving headfirst into some seriously wild conspiracies. We're talking about the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night, questioning everything you thought you knew. From alien encounters to top-secret government experiments, we're peeling back the layers of secrecy to uncover the truth. Buckle up, because things are about to get weird. We're talking about projects so secretive, so shrouded in mystery that most people don't even know they existed. These aren't just your run-of-the-mill conspiracy theories. We're talking about documented events, real people, and tangible evidence that points to something much bigger than we could ever imagine. So, if you're ready to have your mind blown wide open, grab your tinfoil hats and let's do this. All right, let's kick things off with a bang. Project Serpo, this one's a doozy. We're talking about an alleged top-secret exchange program between the US government and, get this, aliens from the Zeta Reticuli star system. That's right, you heard me correctly, aliens. According to the story, it all started back in the 1940s after the Roswell incident, you know, the one with the crashed UFO and the whole alien autopsy thing. Anyway, the story goes that the government recovered a live alien from the crash site and managed to establish communication. This eventually led to a full-blown exchange program where a select group of American military personnel were sent to the aliens' home planet, Serpo, for 13 years. They brought back incredible technology and knowledge, or so the story goes. Is it true? Who knows, but it's a hell of a story. And there's a surprising amount of evidence floating around out there. Okay, so maybe you're not sold on the whole alien exchange program thing, fair enough, but what about all those UFO sightings, you know, the ones the government can't explain? Well, that's where Project Blue Book comes in. This was a real-deal US Air Force project that ran from the 1950s to the 1970s, and their mission was to investigate every single UFO sighting they could get their hands on. We're talking thousands of cases here, folks. Now, the official line is that most of these sightings were just misidentified aircraft, weather balloons, you know, that kind of thing. But here's the kicker. They couldn't explain all of them. There were a significant number of cases that remained unidentified, even after thorough investigation. So what were they? I guess we'll never know for sure. Let's shift gears for a second and talk about the possibility of life on other planets. Now, we've all heard of Kepler 22b, right? It's this exoplanet located about 600 light-years away from Earth, and it's often called Earth's twin because it's located in the habitable zone of its star, meaning it could potentially support liquid water. Think about that for a second, liquid water on another planet. That's a pretty big deal, people. And it's not just Kepler 22b. Astronomers are finding more and more potentially habitable exoplanets all the time. So the question is, are we alone in the universe, or are there other intelligent beings out there, maybe even living on planets like Kepler 22b? I don't know about you, but I'm putting my money on the latter. Okay, now for something a little closer to home and a whole lot more disturbing, the Tuskegee syphilis study. This is one of those stories that makes you question the very nature of humanity. From 1932 to 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service conducted a study on African American men in Macon County, Alabama. Now, these men were told they were receiving free health care for bad blood, which was a catch-all term for various ailments at the time. But the truth was far more sinister. These men were intentionally infected with syphilis without their knowledge or consent. To make matters worse, they were denied treatment even after penicillin became widely available as a cure in the 1940s. The study only ended in 1972 after it was leaked to the press, sparking public outrage and leading to significant changes in US law and regulation regarding the protection of participants in clinical studies. Hold on to your hats, folks, because this next one is seriously messed up. We're talking about Operation Night Train, a top-secret military operation that involved testing biological agents on American soil. Now, the details are still largely classified, but here's what we do know. From the 1950s to the 1970s, the US Army conducted a series of experiments to simulate a biological attack on American cities. They released harmless bacteria and chemicals over populated areas, sometimes without even informing the local authorities. The goal was to study how these agents would spread, and to assess the country's vulnerability to a biological attack. It's a chilling thought, to say the least, that our own government would conduct such experiments on its own citizens. This next one is not for the faint of heart. We're talking about Unit 731, a covert biological and chemical warfare research unit of the Imperial Japanese Army that operated during World War II. These guys were conducting some of the most horrific human experiments the world has ever seen. We're talking vivisections, amputations, disease injections, the works. They used prisoners of war, Chinese civilians, and even children as their test subjects. The details of their experiments are absolutely gruesome, and for a long time the Japanese government denied their existence altogether. It wasn't until the 1980s that the truth started to come out, and even today the full extent of Unit 731's crimes remains largely unknown. Okay, so we've talked about biological warfare experiments on land, but did you know the US Navy was conducting similar experiments at sea? Enter Operation Sea Spray. In 1950, the Navy released a massive cloud of bacteria over the San Francisco Bay area. They used giant hoses to spray the bacteria from a ship just offshore, and the wind carried it inland, exposing hundreds of thousands of unsuspecting civilians. Now the Navy claimed they were using a harmless bacteria to simulate a biological attack, but many people believe they were testing more dangerous agents. And here's the kicker. Shortly after the experiment, there was an outbreak of a rare bacterial infection in the area. Coincidence? You decide. All right, let's dive into something even more mysterious, the cell. Now, nobody really knows what this project was about, and that's what makes it so intriguing. Some say it was a secret government program to develop psychic abilities in soldiers. Others believe it was an attempt to communicate with extraterrestrial beings. There are even rumors that the cell was involved in time travel experiments. Whatever the truth may be, it's clear that this project was something big. And the fact that the government has gone to such great lengths to keep it under wraps only adds to the mystery. Let's talk about mind control, shall we? Project MKUltra is probably the most well-known example of the CIA's foray into mind control experiments, but it was far from the only one. Project Trapux was another top-secret program that ran from the 1950s to the 1970s, and it was all about finding ways to influence human behavior. We're talking about everything from hypnosis and drugs to sensory deprivation and electroconvulsive therapy. The goal was to develop techniques that could be used to interrogate prisoners, create sleeper agents, or even control entire populations. It's some seriously scary stuff, and the fact that it was all happening right under our noses is pretty unsettling. Now, let's head over to South Africa during the apartheid era, where the government was running a top-secret chemical and biological weapons program known as Project Coast. This program was responsible for developing a range of deadly toxins and pathogens, including anthrax, cholera, and botulinum toxin. But here's where things get really messed up. Project Coast wasn't just developing these weapons for military purposes. They were also using them on their own people. There are credible reports of Project Coast scientists conducting experiments on political prisoners, often with fatal results. It's a dark chapter in South African history, and one that is only now beginning to come to light. All right, let's talk about Operation Paperclip. This one's a real head-scratcher. After World War II, the US government secretly brought over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians to the United States. Now, these weren't just any Germans. We're talking about some of the brightest minds in the Nazi regime, including Werner von Braun, the guy who helped develop the V-2 rocket. The official line was that these scientists were brought over to help with the Cold War effort, but some people believe there was more to it than that. They argue that the US government was more interested in acquiring Nazi technology and expertise than in punishing war criminals. Let's talk about Project Bacchus, another top-secret US government program that focused on biological warfare. This one was all about developing ways to weaponize plant diseases, turning Mother Nature's own creations against us. Now, The details are still largely classified, but we do know that Project Bacchus involved research into a variety of plant pathogens, including rice blast, wheat rust, and potato blight. These diseases have the potential to devastate crops and cause widespread famine, making them a powerful weapon in the wrong hands. Edgewood Arsenal, a US Army facility in Maryland, was the site of some seriously messed up human experiments from the 1950s to the 1970s. We're talking about over 7,000 soldiers who were exposed to a cocktail of chemical and biological agents, including sarin gas, LSD, and VX nerve agent. These experiments were conducted without the soldiers' informed consent, and many of them suffered long-term health problems as a result. It's a dark chapter in the history of the US military, and one that is still shrouded in secrecy. All right, let's talk about the DICE tests. These were a series of large-scale chemical warfare experiments conducted by the British military in the 1950s and 1960s. They sprayed massive amounts of chemical agents, including sarin and mustard gas, over ships and land areas to study their effects. Now, the British government claimed these tests were necessary to assess the country's vulnerability to a chemical attack. But many people believe they were also using these tests to develop new and more deadly chemical weapons. Project SHAD, which stands for Shipboard Hazard and Defense, was a series of tests conducted by the US Navy from the 1960s to the 1980s. Now, these tests were designed to assess the vulnerability of Navy ships to chemical and biological attacks. But here's the catch: they used actual chemical and biological agents in these tests, and they often didn't inform the sailors on board. Thousands of sailors were exposed to dangerous substances, and many of them suffered long-term health problems as a result. It wasn't until the 1990s that the full extent of Project SHAD was revealed, and the government has faced heavy criticism for its handling of the program. In 1979, there was a massive anthrax outbreak in the city of Sverdlovsk in the Soviet Union. Officially, the Soviet government claimed the outbreak was caused by contaminated meat, but many people believe it was the result of an accidental release from a nearby military facility that was producing anthrax spores for biological weapons. The truth is, we may never know for sure what happened at Sverdlovsk, but the incident serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of biological weapons and the importance of transparency and accountability when it comes to government research. Porton Down, a top-secret military research facility in the United Kingdom, has been the subject of controversy and speculation for decades. Officially, Porton Down conducts research into chemical and biological defense, but there have been numerous allegations of unethical experiments and cover-ups over the years. One of the most well-known cases involved the death of Ronald Madison, a 20-year-old airman who died in 1953 after being exposed to sarin gas during an experiment. The circumstances surrounding Madison's death are still disputed, and Porton Down remains a place of secrecy and suspicion. All right, let's switch gears and talk about something a little different. Blue Harvest. Now, this might sound like the name of a breakfast cereal, but it was actually the code name used for the production of Return of the Jedi, the third film in the original Star Wars trilogy. The reason for the code name? To keep the film's plot a secret, of course, but some people believe there was more to it than that. They argue that the code name was also used to deceive the unions and keep production costs down. It's a classic case of Hollywood smoke and mirrors, and it just goes to show that even in the world of entertainment, secrecy is the name of the game. Deep in the heart of North Korea lies the Rehab Complex, a secretive facility that is believed to be involved in the country's nuclear and missile programs. The complex is heavily guarded, and very little is known about what goes on inside, but satellite imagery and defector accounts suggest that it plays a key role in North Korea's weapons development. The Rehab Complex is a stark reminder of the secrecy that shrouds the North Korean regime and the challenges of dealing with a country that is so isolated from the rest of the world. Operation Cauldron was a series of biological warfare tests conducted by the British military off the coast of Scotland in 1952. Now, these tests were designed to assess the threat posed by airborne biological weapons. But instead of using human subjects, they used animals. Thousands of guinea pigs, rabbits and monkeys were exposed to anthrax and other deadly pathogens, often with fatal results. The use of animals in these experiments sparked outrage at the time, and it continues to be a controversial topic today. And finally, let's talk about Operation Whitecoat. This one's a real ethical dilemma. From 1954 to 1973, the US Army conducted a program that involved using conscientious objectors as volunteers for medical research. Now, these volunteers were all Seventh-day Adventists who refused to perform combat service due to their religious beliefs. They were exposed to a variety of biological agents, including anthrax, Q fever, and tularemia, to test the effectiveness of vaccines and treatments. While the volunteers were informed of the risks and volunteered of their own free will, the program raises serious ethical questions about the use of human subjects in medical research, especially when those subjects are motivated by religious beliefs. Well, folks, there you have it. A journey through some of the most secretive and controversial projects in history. From alien encounters to biological warfare, we've covered it all. I know it's a lot to take in, and trust me, I'm right there with you. The more you dig into this stuff, the more you realize just how much we don't know. But one thing's for sure, the truth is out there, somewhere. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the unknown, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more mind-blowing content. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Until next time, stay curious, my friends.